another episode of my Warhammer Conquest review series. This week we will be reviewing Warhammer Conquest issue 41. And as always, first thing I know you guys want to look at is the plastic pack. So let's get that open. Here we have the first in two-part sprues of the Plague Burst Crawler, which is a small-scale tank for a Death Guard. It's, as you can see, it's not too big. It's smaller than, for example, a Rhino. It's got quite a lot of cool stuff. It's very well done. You can see that you've got you've got two options for the track. You've got that kind of clawed track there, or you could flip it over if you wanted and use the other track. But that track's going to look better if you go on the inside, so that's probably what that's for. You've got the two sides there, which look very nice. You can see the wheels and the side gun ports for, I'm not sure what they are. They look like some kind of flamer. You've got your grenade launcher there, so it comes with the standard stuff. Here, do we have all the guns? No. We have here the tanks for. As it looks like it could be a flamer or some sort of plague spewer. You've got the wheels there, the tracks. Some more random coggage to make it look cool. Oh, this isn't a. Sorry, I thought this was a grenade launcher. It's not a grenade launcher. It's actually the barrels of a small rotating. Looks like an auto gun. So you can see the tank, when complete, will come with a large mortar, which will have some cool rules with it, no doubt. Some flamer or spray things, and what looks like some sort of heavy stubber or auto gun variant. Maybe it's an assault cannon. We will find out inside. Okay, page 1, we have the signature of our spiritual lord, and we have some beautiful artwork of the Plague Crawler going into action. There's some fantastic artwork pieces in these ones. There we go. Mobile artillery, specialism, siege and bio warfare. So that gives us a fairly solid idea of its background. Maintained by demonic artifice. The designs of Plague Crawlers came from the mind of Primarch Mortarion himself. Death Guard warsmiths and the mysterious Dark Mechanicum operate the forges and foundries in which Plague Burst Crawlers are made. So they're quite cool. Here's another more bone white version of it, looking a bit more kind of surgical, and here's another beautiful green one. So you've got some beautiful variants there. You've got the Plague Burst Mortar. This one has a different variant, which is a heavy slugger. For those of you who don't know what a slugger is, it's more of a modern kind of gun. The kind of, that fires bullets like we have now. They're known as sluggers because they throw slugs. Heavy sluggers, versions like that. The cannons at the side are marked as entropy cannons. Again, that's a different variant to what we've got on this one. I wonder if they're gonna. Let's see what's on the next page, if it shows the other variants. There you go. The next page we have a list of Plague Crawler weapons. The Plague Burst Mortar is the signature weapon of the Plague Burst Crawler. It fires toxic shells over colossal distances, dropping them in great arcs onto the heads of carrying enemies. One drawback of this weapon is its inability to fire enemies who are closer than its minimum range. So that's fairly cool. You're talking a long to medium range weapon there. If anybody's not familiar with medieval siege warfare, that was actually a fairly common thing. They throw rotten carcasses, diseased bodies, anything they could into sieges to start over the walls of castles and into sieges to basically start plague and disease and try and weaken their opponents. Got the heavy slugger, archaic but effective. The heavy slugger fires high caliber, low velocity rounds that are capable of punching through most body armor. These most brutal weapons are mounted to the hull in order to blast enemy infantry to bloody pieces. Or, the one we've got there, is the Rothail volley gun. Again, for those who aren't familiar with history, a volley gun is a kind of multi-barrel musket. They were traditionally front-loading. I don't know if there are any breech-loading ones. If any of you have watched the Sharp series, Sergeant Harper carries a volley gun in the later episodes. Several of them were made by the British. A lot of them were made by the Polish. The Polish loved multi-barrel weapons, and they didn't fire. Unlike many multi-barrel weapons, their purpose wasn't to fire one barrel then change, one barrel then change, but rather to fire all the barrels at once. They were usually used for things like again, siege warfare or ship-to-ship warfare. It was common to see volley guns used between ships to either clear decks or to fire at the enemy to try and, well, basically clear the other deck. They were like a bit more of a complex version of a shotgun. So instead of firing a shell full of tiny bullets, they fired a lot of heavy bullets. The idea that each bullet would kill and each bullet would do damage. The idea also being that it would give longer range, whereas shot, because it spreads out, becomes ineffective at range. Volley guns, where they're barrels and they fire straight forward, you know, they're like a shotgun that still maintains its effectiveness at a greater range. If heavier firepower is required, the Plague Burst Crawler can be equipped with a Rothail volley gun. This weapon sacrifices rate of fire and damage for improved armor penetration and increased power. Each enemy infantry rightly cower before the punishing fire of this weapon. Now we've got the entropy cannon, which I'll show you is that one there. Demon engine calling on powers that mortars would rarely risk unleashing. Entropy cannons direct the raw power of the water towards the enemy, so that's fucking cool. Wonder if that counts as a psychic attack, but shots twist and melt armor and flesh alike. Then we've got the Plague Spitter, which is the one that our Plague Burst Crawler is shown to be equipped with on the cover. These are probably easy to build, so I imagine you're only going to get one option. No, I am fibbing. In this, you've got the heavy stubber here and the volley gun here. So you've got that option. It may well be that you get the option for the other gun for the Plague Crawler as well. So we'll have to see what turns up in the second week there. But the Plague Burst Crawler can be vulnerable to enemy infantry that make their way inside its mortar's mineral range. The Plague Spitters are an excellent way of defending against this threat. They can dissolve charging infantry in a torrent of corrosive plague fluid. So that sounds cool. Space Wolves. Space Wolves and Best Wolves. In case any of you are wondering what I do with the models I get, sometimes I do this for Space Wolves and Best Wolves. This is a mild conversion on the Primaris Captain we got last week, or was it the week before? All I've done is swap it out for an older Mark head and give him a chainsaw sword rather that is the same length as the sword he was going to carry anyway. It's one of the Space Wolf variant chainswords, and I'm working my guys as Space Wolves. I've got a couple of variants at the moment. I got Shadow Wolves, which are an Imperial Fist chapter that look like Space Wolves. They're really cool, but those are the ones I bought separately and got from Dark Imperium. I'm planning to paint all the ones I'm getting from Conquest as traditional Space Wolves because I like traditional Space Wolves. Although you can see from this one that I've gone... No, it won't focus. That I've gone for a more greyish colour than the Fimrisian blue. Mostly because they always look more grey in the pictures. Anyway, this issue is telling us all about Space Wolves, which is fantastic. Of all the Lost Marine chapters, Space Wolves are the most independent. They have largely ignored the teachings of Codex Stratus because they're too cool, and prefer to cling to the legacy of their long lost Primarch Leman Russ, the Wolf Father. As a result, Space Wolves are organised much as they were as a legion, 12 great companies, and so on and so forth. It's worth noting the great companies' sizes are estimated anywhere between 100 and 400 Marines. It doesn't actually even make them the largest chapter, to be honest. Sorry, just had to get something out there. With that dubious honour, probably going to the Black Templars, who have so many crusading armies that no one's quite got a clue how many there are. Space Wolves are imagined to be about, about half the size of a proper legion. They were never the biggest legion in the first place, and they lost quite a few troops. So they're either a massive chapter or a tiny legion, depending on how you look at it. They have one successor chapter. They used to have none. They tried to make a successor chapter with a group of Marines called the Wolf Brothers, but the Wolf Brothers started once they left Fenris, they started mutating, and the whole chapter just basically collapsed and ended up getting destroyed. And the Space Wolves never tried again. There is a theory that the reason they can't do it is actually intentional. Space Wolves are probably the most resistant to chaos. One of the theories is that's because when they mutate, they have a predetermined path of mutation. They kind of fall to their more feral instincts. They become wolfen, and eventually they become Fenrisian wolves. Supposedly, leading to the statement there are no wolves on Fenris. Some people, one theory is that this was deliberately put there by the Emperor so that if he needed savage warriors to go and deal with chaos, he could use the Space Wolves, because yes, they would fall to chaos and mutate, but they wouldn't fall to the chaos gods. Rather, they'd fall to just being fucking Space Wolves. They'd turn into savage animals, and they'd mutate along a natural path that was predetermined, meaning that they'd remain loyal and remain mental. There's some credence lent to this by one of the Space Wolves books. When Space Wolves were about to discover a way to stabilise their gene seeds so that they could create a chapter, the Thousand Sons launched a massive all-out assault. And one theory is that they did this because the Primarch of the Thousand Sons is actually playing the long game as a loyalist. He didn't mean to fuck up the Emperor's plans. He didn't want to fuck up the Emperor's plans. He knew he had no choice but to go for Tzeentch. But his game is, one theory says, he's actually literally playing the long game as the loyalist. And in the final act of chaos, Tzeentch is going to kill itself, because that'll be the one change it's never done. And Magnus will be the person that kills Tzeentch, will ascend to be the god of change, and will declare, in a massive change, Tzeentch or Magnus at that point, switching loyalty to the Imperium and then tearing into the other Chaos gods, and so on and so forth. And then the Emperor will ascend and fairies will explode out your ears. This is one of the more out there theories. I don't know if it's true. It's just one I like because it's just so mental. The idea that all this time Magnus was still loyal and was just playing the fucking long game, trying to outwit Tzeentch. And that Tzeentch knows this and doesn't care, because Tzeentch is planning on one big massive final change, and then to completely change by replacing himself with Magnus, because he's a chaos god. And the ideas of immortality or self-preservation are kind of alien to chaos gods, in that they do them but they don't, and their long games are unfathomable. But that's a random cool ranty aside. But yeah, one theory is that Space Wolves are going to play a massive and important key part in Magnus's long-term plan. So Magnus blocked them evolving and becoming more stable so that they maintain their stability in the face of chaos, because he needed to be able to use them as they were, not as some newer thing. That being said, since the Dark Imperium and since Call stabilised the gene seeds, Space Wolves do have another successor chapter, the Wolf Spear, who guard one of the lesser rifts of Chaos. GW haven't given us a colour pattern for those guys. We just know they're mentioned in the book as the only Space Wolf successor chapter, and they guard a specific mini maelstrom, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, Space Wolves are one of the original founding chapters. They have their own Primarch, and as you can tell, their stuff looks very different. Yeah, they don't have the arrows and crossed, the arrows and the crossed arrows and different shoulder trim for different things. They've got their own unique set of heraldry, red and black, indicating battle units. Wolf Scouts being grey and black. Red and yellow markings used to indicate close support packs. Sorry, red and black indicate Grey Hunters rather. The fire support packs like Long Fangs, Aggressors, and Hellblasters use black and white. This guy is a captain, so he has his own particular insignia there, and the Space Wolf insignia there. I went with red and black because he's equipped much more like a Grey Hunter with his bolt rifle, or an Intercessor with his bolt rifle. So yeah, my theory is that he's come up through those ranks and through the ranks of the Grey Hunter, which is cool. Then you've got all these different ones. The original Space Wolf symbol is now occupied by the Blackmanes. The Blackmanes are the chapter of Ragnar Blackmane. However, it's worth noting, prior to Ragnar Blackmane being given that, and them each Great Company being given its own symbol, that was the generic Space Wolf symbol, and to most of us old school players, it still is. That's the Space Wolf symbol. That's the symbol you get for Space Wolves. You've got the company. The Great Wolf has the Silver Wolf Rampant. You've got the Death Wolves, which are the ones that swallow the sun. You've got the Iron Wolves. They're much more technological. The Grimbloods, again, they're vicious. The Sea Wolves, they're much more about ship-to-ship assaults, and that their leader once killed a Kraken with his bare hands. The Sons of Morkai. Morkai is also the two-faced Fenrisian god of death. So there's another grim one there. Bloodmaws, I'm not sure of. The Red Moons, the Drake Slayers, the Fire Howlers, and the Storm Wolves. All different chapters. You may notice the Space Wolves have 13 chapters, but only 12 bits there. That's because the 13th chapter disappeared into the warp. Chasing the defeated Chaos forces. The 13th chapter, which would have been 1,000 men strong, kind of, was the one sent to harry and hunt down and try and kill the remaining Primarchs, the remaining Renegades. It disappeared into the warp, and until recently, no one knew what happened of it. They've got in the Fang, they've got, which is the Space Wolves fortress. They've got a big round rock dais, which on that each company has its symbol, and when a company's leader dies, that symbol's taken off, and the next leader puts their symbol on. There's always a 13th one for the 13th or Lost Company. They recently came back, and they're where the Wolfen come from, which basically they've mutated due to Chaos, but they've mutated in a very specific way that seems to be unique to Space Wolves. And despite the fact they're basically Chaos mutants, they're still also Space Wolves with the Space Wolves mentality and a certain purity of spirit. It's weird, but if you read some of the older original stories of how the Emperor was created and how the Warp was created, it actually ties in quite well. Because in the original stories, and I don't know how much they've retconned this, in the original stories, the warp was fine when it was just animals. It was only when more complex creatures like humans evolved with their weird emotions and their neuroses that they caused sort of eddies and blockages and bad stuff in the warp, which eventually all coalesced into the Chaos powers. Pure animals don't get affected anywhere near as much because they're pure animals. They exist as the pure basic essence of the warp without all these screwed up psychological problems that humans have, basically, was the principle. And if Space Wolves are more animalistic, the idea that they'll devolve and mutate down an animalistic path which still keeps them functional kind of ties into that. And that's cool. And you've got an explanation of it here about Fenrisian Wolves. Like as I said before, there's a saying: there are no walls on Fenris. The belief is that if a space wolf degenerates too far, it degenerates past being a wolfen, which is a massively muscled kind of Wolverine Hulk hybrid, into just being literally massive wolves. That's supposedly why the wolfen are so intelligent and why they can be ridden, because they can't be tamed, but they still have some of the intellect when they were Marines or when they were men, which allows them to kind of be cooperated with. Or something like that. You know, you've got Warzone Fenris here, which is a map of all the bits and pieces. That's Fenris itself. That circle there is the Fang. It is the biggest fortress outside of Terra, being made of a massive... It's basically the biggest mountain on the planet carved out and made into a fortress. It's also the only solid place that remains solid throughout the entire thing. The planet Fenris has an elliptical orbit. Every time it gets close to the sun, things melt. Massive, great kraken monsters come up from the deep, which they think might actually be remnants of an old Tyranid hive fleet, come up and kill things. The primitive humans that live on the world fight and kill and have to try and survive, because the world's mostly ice. The islands sink, the ice crawls back, and then as it goes further away, they've got to get all the food and then try and survive through the winter, and so on and so forth. And it's during these times that that the Space Wolves come out from their fortress and pick the biggest and baddest of these warriors. So that's all pretty cool. And you've got another big thing about the Siege of Fenris, which is a cool thing there, which again you can see all these Zentian warriors, which is cool. It's I know that they've been more recently, but it was up until recently the last time they came in. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Sorry, getting caught up with that. That's really cool. Next, we've got the building of the Plague Burst Crawler. This will give you the basis. Obviously, there's your clip of safety bit. Remember, you don't want to take an arm off. In this bit, they're not recommending you build it in a particular method. You've just got the basics of how to build it and how to lay on it. Not all of the stuff you need is necessarily going to be here to create the whole thing, but most of the stuff you've got here will enable you to build it. These are the entire instructions by the look of it, because it contains instructions for bits that aren't. It has the instructions for the massive cannon. The massive cannon isn't on this bit, so it'll be interesting to see what they put in next one. Possibly they'll put how to play it, how to paint it. Yep. Here we can see from the instructions that you're going to get all the variants, so you get to choose what layout you do. Next, we've got the how-to. This one there showing us how to paint the Plague Surgeon, which was one in last week's giveaway or the week before, and they're basically showing us. Sorry, with the highlights, what you can do to add to this kick-ass model that you got last week. First time we're going to get to use a new battle map, Warzone Kalon. So if you've been playing the campaign that goes with this, you're going to move on to the next Warzone. They've got some more bits of scenery which aren't available. Which aren't available from Conquest yet. A lot of these bits of scenery you can actually go and get yourself from GW if you can't wait for them to come from Conquest, or you can wait for them to come from Conquest to save a substantial amount of money. So you've got these objectives, you've got terrain pieces, the thermic generator, the hemotrope reactor, and the ultramite stack. You've got a nice world map there showing you the interactions and how things work and how cool they look. In case you're wondering why you sometimes get round maps like that, it's mostly to try and retain the appropriate shape and position of some of the things shown on the map, because when you actually have a flat map, it stretches out and distorts it. Random fact. the maps we use stretch Europe out quite a lot because they were designed to help European sailors travel, so they needed Europe to be bigger. So if you stretch out that area, we're actually, if you're from Europe or America, when you look at your country compared to Africa, Africa's a lot bigger than it actually looks, and both Europe and America, being the countries that most maps were used for, and having been expanded, are in fact a lot smaller and a lot more northerly than we've been led to believe. Look up Peter's projection maps if you're fascinated by that kind of random minutia. So here again we've got the background for it, and that's pretty cool. It's worth noting, just double check, haven't had the stats for the Plague Burst Crawler, so I imagine we're going to get those stats next week, so we'll see exactly what the weapon does and exactly what the variants are. It might be worth holding off to build it until you've seen those stats. Actually, you can't anyway, so it doesn't matter. None of these parts here are the parts you actually need to build the complete weapon, so, if you want, you can build what you can, but it may all be a lot easier to build the whole thing in situ, and you'll have seen the weapons at that time, so you'll know what they can do and which ones you think your army can best benefit from. More stuff telling you to buy stuff and other cool stuff. Oh, pretty. Obviously, next week, part 2 of the Plague Burst Crawler. We'll also be getting the Plague Burst Crawler Paint Guide, the Plague Burst Crawler Rules, and the Garden of Nurgle. The Garden of Nurgle is basically a garden of diseases and horrific stuff that Nurgle tends to and lives in. Turns out Nurgle's actually quite a nifty bloke. He's like a disgusting old granddad. Hence they call him Grandfather Nurgle. I think I may have gone through this round before, but again, he's supposedly the only one of the Chaos Gods that has any genuine affection for his followers. To the rest, they're a combination of pawns and road snacks. And after that, we are getting the Thermic Plasma Regulators. Another awesome bit of scenery. I'm not sure how you're going to play... Yeah. Okay, we've got this thing here. And some explanations, but I don't know if you can use it for anything because you don't actually have any of those scenery pieces as yet. So that'll be interesting. And they didn't have cardboard ones. However, you have got the basic mission on the back. But yeah, looking forward to that next week. The Thermic Generator, another really cool, nifty piece of scenery that's gonna make our battle boards just that extra bit cooler, basically. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that. See you guys next week. Next week is when we'll have the competition because we'll have the whole Plague Crawler and there's no point doing half competition and then waiting. You might as well give away the lot at once. So that's goodbye from me and goodbye from him. See you guys next week. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.